All right, okay, there we go. Hi, everyone. Who's ready for presentation number 2? So, Greg, I don't know if you know this, but you did a previous talk. Well, I'm sure you know this. You did a previous talk on Neon Genesis Evangelion, and the merchandise surrounding it. This is still one of my favorite talks. 2, I found out that I had like limited edition French merchandise, which was very cool to find out.
Okay.
3, it convinced my girlfriend to watch the show.
All right.
To see what you're going to be able to convince my girlfriend to do after learning about flags. So I'm handing it over to you, sir. Thank you for your work.
Well, you gotta show me your French merchandise later. I would definitely love to see it. But hi, welcome to Nerd Nite. This is my second Nerd Nite talk, and I'll be talking about flags, stars, stripes, and colors of my. So let's get right into it. Just out of curiosity, who in the audience has heard of the term vexillology? Okay, so a decent amount of you. Okay. Well, for folks that aren't aware, it is the term that's described as the study of design of flag and the history of it. So this was coined in the 1960s, so perfect in time with surf music, right? By a vexillologist by the name of Whitney Smith, and it came from heraldry, if you're familiar with that, which came from the study of coat of arms. And just as a reminder, flags are mostly used to identify like ships or in battlefields because you need to know who you may or may not be firing at. So yeah, but before we go into this, I do want to provide some content warnings. So this talk is 100% objective. Everything that I say is absolute true for vexillology. Just joking. Vexillology is a new, form of study. There's so many opinions, so many designers and vexillologists that are very opinionated about this. So I'm just giving a basic realm, and we're going to kind of go from there. And also, just as a side note, there is going to be, flags that might, trigger some people, and this is not malicious intent towards any sort of like group, organization, or any of that sort. And the main focus is design because, well, graphic design is my passion. So, now, I like to give some personal backstory, and by the way, these photos that I'm about to show are quite rare because I'm adopted, so I don't have many childhood photos, so just a fair warning. So, I was born in Hong Kong, and this is the flag of Hong Kong since 1997. If you know the flag of Hong Kong before then, it didn't look that great, but this was the new flag because they were going to be handed over to the People's Republic of China. So they wanted to copy the same red as the PRC flag. They adopted 5 stars. They adopted the local flower of Hong Kong that only exists in Hong Kong. And this is me as a child or as a baby. This is the one baby picture that I have, by the way. And I was very happy with this flag. This is an awesome flag. I find a lot of pride in. Then I moved to, well, just like any other Cantonese person in the world, Vancouver, or Canada. All right. And Canada's flag is fucking awesome. It has a 2-for-1 ratio, which is important in flags, by the way, along with an awesome maple leaf with great colors. And you can see I was very happy with this flag. This is a kick-ass flag. I would love to have this flag, be, my national symbol. But I was only there for a month, and I moved to America, which America has a very unique flag. It is one of the few sovereign states that has dynamic elements, meaning that the stars in the canton, which is the upper left or the upper right corner, or what we call in vexillology the hoist side, has dynamic elements between the states, and the last one was white, right? And technically, I guess the stripes could change, but whatever. And I was like, you know what, fuck yeah, like America, let's do this, let's go, right? But then I found out that America has states, and those states have flags. And if you know about state flags, they're very disappointing. They're the classic blue background of the state seal. And by the way, there's many states that have this. And you can see I was pretty disappointed overall as a child. But I grew up in Utah. I love Utah. I have a lot of pride. It's a wonderful state with a lot of great natural phenomenon. But you know what's else in a good state with great natural phenomenon? California. So I was gonna move to California, and you know what? I was pretty excited. I was pretty happy, right? Like, this is pretty nice. Like, you got the red star on the canton, you have the red base, you have text, which we'll get into in a second, and you have this fairly iconic bear, which looks a little derpy, but all right, like, it's cool, right? Well, my parents got divorced, and I had to move to Kentucky, which I love Kentucky, but as you see, blue background, state seal. And I was dying on the inside. Right. So I went to Kentucky, I went to high school there. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go to college in California for animation, right? So going back to California. Hooray! Yeah! Woo! Then I found out about city flags. And you know the city of Los Angeles, this is probably the worst offender of them all. I have no problem with the colors, it's just city seals suck, and they only are useful for documents. And at this point, I'm just disappointed, you know? I'm like, it's fine, I guess. So now that I've shown my backstory and kind of like all the different kind of flags, you might be thinking, okay, Greg, what makes a good flag, right? Well, I got some answers for you. So this was a survey done by the North American Vexillological Association. Yes, there is a professional association for this, about the 5 basic flag principles. And this was comprised by Ted Kay, who's a vexillologist, and he made this pamphlet called Good Flag, Bad Flag. And these are the 5 principles. Keep it simple, use meaningful symbolism, use 2 or 3 basic colors, no lettering or seals, and be distinctive or related. So those are kind of the base 5 principles that we're working with within vexillology. And instead of trying to go through every single flag that's in this pamphlet, what I'm just gonna do is I'm just gonna do a comparison and a contrast between the good flags and the bad flags. So this is all the good flags. You have the flag of Bangladesh. You have the flag of Alaska. Any Alaskans or New Mexicans in here? Amsterdam, yeah. The Iroquois Nation and the country of Liberia. Yeah. So awesome, awesome flags that follow those 5 basic principles. These are the bad flags, according to the principles. You have the state of West Virginia. You have Bay of Tunisia. You have Corte d'Or, the general consulate, not the specific region. You have the Navajo Nation. You also have the province flag of Manitoba, and also the Association of American States, which, yes, that is 50-ish flags in one flag. And they do update whenever a state changes a new flag. So not great, really, overall. So you might be thinking, okay, this is pretty neat, interesting. What does this mean and how does this impact our world? Well, this basically in 2001 got caught on fire in terms of like niche areas of the internet to where now it's within popular lexicon. So there is a fairly popular design-focused radio show called 99% Visual. It's a great podcast and radio show. I highly recommend it. It's hosted by Roman Mars, who gave a TED Talk on city flags. And he uses the city flag of Chicago as an example. And this TED Talk has about 5 million views right now. So a very popular TED Talk. And in doing so, he also semi-bullied a town in Idaho, which was voted to have the worst flag in the North American continent in 2017. This is the city of Pocatello. And yes, this is their flag. And yes, it does have a trademark and a copyright. Yeah. But they were bullied-ish to change their design, and this is their design in 2017. So you still have, you actually have properly represented 3 mountains in there that represents their, proper mountains, and you have a compass rose with Snow Peak and also a star to kind of like show Pocatello's future. And if you're curious, they have an excellent TED Talk as well, talking about their redesign as a part of their bullying from the Roman Mars talk. So highly recommend. Another TED Talk I'd like to shout out here is one by Michael Green, who runs the organization Flags for Good. So he runs this organization that prints out all sorts of different flags for charities and LGBTQ support. Very highly recommend, and all sorts of interesting flag designs. And he made a TED Talk about how flags have super powerful meanings. He includes talking about like the Nazi flag, the Confederate flag, and etc., which we'll go into in a little bit. And we'll talk about the flag that he's holding up in a later part of this talk. The r/Vexiology subreddit, if you are any Redditors in the audience, this has over 600,000 members. And every day there are new, flag designs or follows of flag referendums all across the world. So it's a vibrant community, and there's been a lot of YouTubers like CGB Grey who grades flags like they're like art projects by the countries as students. So, and what does this mean overall? Well, we should look at redesigns across the world and how much it's influenced. Now, I know we're not necessarily talking about the 60s, but since 1957, there's been around 130 sovereign states that have redesigned or adopted a new flag with more income. Now, I will like to preface, this came as a direct result after World War II and European imperialism, so you can kind of see where that all kind of comes from, but we'll have some examples. This is one of my favorites. I don't know if anyone in the audience knows what this flag is, but this is the flag of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, which is a country in kind of like South Central Africa. And on the canton, which is the top left of the flag, is a star that represents the Democratic Republic of Congo's future, and also the yellow is a representative of their mineral resources. They have a bend sinister, which is the diagonal, with the red, which is representative of the blood of their martyrs, which we'll kind of get into the history a little bit, and a yellow fimbrication on the bend sinister with a blue background also representing hope. Now, this was adopted in 2006, but if we look at the history of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, they went through 8 designs since 1960. Partially, this is because they went through all sorts of different government regimes, right? So you have Belgian Congo, you have Congo Leopold, you have going to Zaire, adopting the Pan-African colors, and then you're going back towards its roots in terms of like what is modern day DRC or Democratic Republic of Congo. So this is, while it might not fully pertinent to us, it's really important to people all around the world that they have something that is representative of them, right? Something else to note is that we have around like 7 states since the 2000s that have changed their flags, with more states and cities actually proposing referendums for this, because there's a lot of state and city pride. And we also have a bunch of different organizations around the world that have solely dedicated to vexiology in total. Obviously, the aforementioned NAVA, North American Vexiological Association. You have the International Federation of Vexiological Associations, which is kind of the parent of NAVA and parent of all associations around the world, and the Flag Institute in Britain. So instead of like my previous counterparts on TED Talks, I would like to look at these redesigns and see if they have succeeded, and see if we're going in a good direction for redesign. So let's talk about Georgia. So this is the former flag of Georgia, and basically in 2001, they decided, hey, you know what? We don't want very clear Confederate symbolism in our flag. That's fair, right? Right. So they spent a lot of time deliberating, and this is their choice in 2001. Yes, you see 5 flags on the bottom, 5, 2 of which are not really related to Georgia, if you think about it, and one that still includes their old Confederate flag, or Confederate symbol flag. So Georgians didn't like this to a point where they only had this for 2 years, less than 2 years. And in 2003, they adopted this flag. Now, you might think this is better, but let's give a proper history lesson here. This is not the official Confederate flag. It has never been the official Confederate flag. If you see anyone that hangs this outside, this is the banner of the Northern Virginia Army of the Confederacy. So if they say this is my heritage, well, they better have had an ancestor in the Northern Virginia Army. The official Confederate flags, which, by the way, was a very dysfunctional government, and that's another Nerd Nite talk, they had about 10 flags in total in their lifetime. The first one is the actual proper name of the Stars and Bars, and the bottom one is, yes, includes the banner, but has a white background with a red vertical column on the fly side. Now, I'd like to mention the top one. Does that look familiar to anyone in the audience?
Yes.
This was deliberate. This was deliberate within the flag referendum of Georgia. They deliberately did this. This is not a joke. Like, that is something that they did, and that it still continues on within the flag of Georgia. But no one talks about it because it's not obvious. No one knows the full history, and everyone assumes the other picture is the official flag. So to me, this is a failure of redesign. Yeah. All right. Now, let's take a look at a better example. Let's look at Georgia's neighbor, Mississippi. I'm not going to dive into this because it's just really boring, to be honest. So we're just going to skip past it, but this is Mississippi's flag. And in 2020, in lieu of the George Floyd protests, the residents of Mississippi went out and said, we need our flag to be changed. This is their adopted flag in 2023. It's very pretty. The magnolia is the state flower of Mississippi. You have 10 stars on the side representing Mississippi as the 20th state in the Union. You have the gold star, which actually is split out into 5 parts representing all the 5 Native American tribes that originally inhabited the area. And the yellow is reminiscent to Mississippi's cultural history. So, yes, there is In God We Trust, and that was a part of the law, unfortunately, but this is much better. This is a much better redesign, and if I was a Mississippian, I'd be very happy to hang this in my home. Yeah. All right. Now, let's go to my former home state of Utah. I'm not going to dive into this again, but basically, there's a beehive because Utah is known as a beehive state for industrial effort. And this is their new flag as of 2024. Which is really nice. The blue represents the dark blue skies within Utah and also the lakes. The white mountains obviously represent northern Utah and the ski industry. The red rock base is representative of southern Utah with all of its national parks. And in the middle is a hexagon with a beehive and the star to represent statehood. So this is an excellent redesign. And I am so happy as a former Utah. Yeah. All right, this is the official Earth Day flag. This was adopted in 1972 in response to, Earth Day being an official holiday, right, within the United States. And yeah, I don't think you can have a 5-year-old draw this, really. It's just, that's it, really, right? And people still hang this, and it's fine, but you get various qualities of the flag if you think about it, right? They're in a JPEG form, really low, it just doesn't look great, really. And in 2015, in lieu of the expansion of spatial exploration on Earth, there was a lot of designers that wanted to redesign a good flag for Earth. And this is what they came up with. There's 7 circles representing the 7 continents, formed in the shape of a flower representing life on Earth, with the blue as representative of the ocean. Very clear, and it works well with stamps or things that you would put on a spacesuit, right? And also takes a lot of inspiration with the United Nations flag. So I think this is an excellent redesign. It's not a true redesign as it's not fully adopted everywhere, but it's really nice, right? The next flag I'd like to talk about is Antarctica. This was the flag flown in 1929 by British and New Zealand and Australian explorers because they didn't really have anything else to properly represent Antarctica. And by the way, Antarctica has had a lot of explorations within flags, partially because, well, no one would really bat an eye. It's Antarctica, right? No one really owns it. So there's been a lot of different iterations on it, and that one was the first one. And this is one of the more recent ones, which you think, this isn't too bad, right? Like, this is okay. Well, this was adopted in 1996 and had a vexillologist from the Flag Institute design it. But this was first debuted in a video game called 3D World Atlas, whose copyright is owned by Electronic Arts, or EA. Now, I don't know how we feel about a company owning the copyright of a flag. I feel like that's a little wrong. So, and also, I'm sorry to say, Antarctica does not really look like this anymore due to climate change. So, my shirt also is a little out of date. But in 2018, there was a proposal called the True South proposal to make a new flag for Antarctica that a lot of Antarctic organizations have adopted. This is the flag that they have proposed, which has a lot of great, meaningful symbolism. Yeah, it's a great flag. The white base obviously represents the icebergs and, the icy nature and the snowy nature of Antarctica. The blue represents the dark blue skies that you see in Antarctica and it being, night a lot of the times. The white mountain represents Antarctica's peaks with the shadow, which then encompasses a compass that points south. And the thing with this is that it's supposed to inspire future generations of humans to, continue exploring and use Antarctica as a neutral ground and for, exploration and peace to come. And there is a second part to this flag that makes this even more awesome. It is a twin. It is a twin of the flag of Greenland. Yeah. So Greenland's flag, which was adopted in the 1980s, post Denmark's Home Rule implementation, had this flag where it represents the sun and the ocean, right? And it's like white skies and such. And you'll see that there's a lot of interesting comparisons. For one, the colors actually match what the colors will look like on a magnet with the magnetic north and south. The latitude, which I don't fully have within the ratios, but like the ratios of the flags actually correspond to the landmass of Antarctica and Greenland. They also follow the prime meridian and also follow along within the shadow of each other. So an excellent flag. I hope that other twins, maybe South Dakota, North Dakota, could kind of follow suit, right? Now, after all of this, let's get back to our local city in Los Angeles. So Los Angeles had a referendum in 2015 to change their flag. I reached out to the organizer, no response, and it didn't go anywhere, really, unfortunately. So I really would like to encourage us in Los Angeles to think about what would be a great city flag. Now, you all in the audience might think, hey, I don't live in Los Angeles. I live in Burbank and Glendale. Well, this is Burbank's flag. I don't know if that is that much better, especially with being incorporated since 1911. And they also kept this flag. They had voted to keep this flag in 2005. And then if you want to see Glendale's, that's Glendale's. And by the way, if you look closely, this is the highest definition image I could find. It is very pixelated in the text if you look closely, and I don't know if that's the official part of the official flag, and I don't know. It is?
At least I live in Glendale. I pass by City Hall all the time. It looks pixelated on it.
Nice. Nice. All right. So I think Glendale might be the worst out of all of these, to be honest. But I digress. And there has been no referendum or any proposal to change the Glendale city flag. So, and I know I didn't include like Culver City, Santa Monica, which also have not great flags, by the way. But like, I highly recommend, if you see all of these things, push for changes and redesign, because it is super important as we take pride within where we live and the groups that we're a part of. So, if you're interested in vexillology and you're interested in just my random ramblings about it, You can follow the r/Mixology, or you can follow me on my Twitter or Instagram, or X, or whatever you want to call it. Yeah, and that's my talk. Thank you so much.
Richardson, everyone! We now turn to your questions. If you have questions, please approach the mic.
Hello.
Hello.
All right. I've got a question where I noticed that almost every single flag is a rectangle, where I know that some states, I think Minnesota has like a triangle flag? Or is it Ohio?
Ohio has a triangle flag. Nepal has I forgot the official term, but they have like 2 triangles.
Yeah.
It's all, so ratios within flags just kind of are all over the place. And it's mostly just out of personal preference and printing availability. So Canada has a 2-to-1, which means they have a 2 horizontal, like the tall is like 2 times their length. So, it's like, hey, like that's a big flag. But some others like Ohio have a much smaller flag, and it's kind of like a swallowtail form. And it's mostly just preference out of the design and maybe wanting to be more unique.
So have they all stuck with like just rectangles and triangles, or with a 2-faced triangle, or have they ever gotten crazy like a trapezoid or something?
There has been some in history that has gone into different shapes, but mainly speaking, a good part about knowing what a flag is how it looks in the wind versus how it looks when it's not windy. And if you can easily identify those, that's a good thing. For most things, like a lot of the former British Commonwealth colonies, it is really hard to identify because they all have the Union Jack and the canton, and then they have a bunch of other things kind of in the middle, and it's like really hard to identify across. But for ships, it was really easy for them because they're like, oh, okay, we're not going to shoot because you're a part of the British colonies, right? So it was really dependent, but there hasn't been a lot of crazy shapes lately because they've been more focused about practicality.
Oh yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
This is a weird mic situation.
All good.
I have 2 questions. One is, I can't remember there being a flag that had been changed because it kind of looked like a white I give up flag. Do you know what that is?
There's been a couple. I mean, Antarctica is obviously one of them. Just to note, the white flag is in public domain, so it's so even if people use it, like it's not really considered very seriously. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that people can't have like flag disputes. There's actually many that go on, in particular with Chad and Romania, because they have the same flag, but they came from it at very different angles. So for the white flag, it's kind of like, most people don't use it anymore because it is within public domain.
Yeah, I guess I remember just hearing a story of like situation where like when you're at war and
Right.
The other question is just with Antarctica, because you mentioned that, and the most obvious question, I guess, is given that there's not an Antarctic environment, how does that actually get decided?
So obviously, there's a lot of different talks in terms about how Antarctica should be distributed, and there's a lot of research facilities on Antarctica. And basically, it got decided because a lot of the research facilities really liked this proposal and wanted to incorporate it into everything that they have. So you'll actually see even Antarctica markers in Antarctica that have the True South proposal as their symbol on their markers, and you'll see kind of all around Antarctica. So it's definitely by committee. It's not like for the flag of Earth, right? It's not like everyone on Earth voted for it, right? By any means, it's just, hey, we like this flag and we feel like that this represents us, then we kind of fly it there accordingly. And then some official association picks it up and it's like, this is it. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Fantastic talk.
Thank you.
First of all, I wanted to ask you, basically my question is, what is the best reason to change a flag? I know that the Chicago City flag has the 4 stars that represent the Chicago Fire and 2 World's Fairs that they hosted. And if they would have won the Olympics bid from 2028, they would have added a fifth star. Is that a valid reason? What is the best reason, in your opinion, to adjust a flag?
I think the best reason to adjust the flag is based off of the people that they represent. If Chicagoans really wanted to change their flag to include the fifth star and they got the Olympic bid, then I think by all means, sure. I know that it had a lot of controversy within Chicagoans, partially just because, money and a bunch of other things, but also at the same time, I think they just take so much pride in their flag that, having an Olympic, a modern event that defines Chicago doesn't really make much sense to them. So I think it really depends on the people. I mean, you saw the changes that, the Democratic Republic of the Congo did, and it was just because there was a lot of different types of oppression and, different governments that came through that they really wanted to go back to their roots, right? So I think it all depends on the people that it represents.
This will be our last question.
Awesome talk.
Thank
I
you.
love this. I'm a total flag nerd. I'm just wondering if you have a favorite national or state flag, and if there's a certain criteria you go by. Like, I'm kind of a nerd with the Isle of Man flag and all the
Yeah, that's a great one. Yeah.
Or pure body, peaceful sunset.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have something like that in symmetry, like Maryland, or is there something that really drives you nuts?
Maryland, I flip back and forth. If you're familiar with the Maryland flag, I recommend you look it up. It's basically like a coat of arms, but it's horrendously hideous and it's beautiful. It's interesting. I think my favorite flag, honestly, is the flag of Alaska. There's so much symbolism there and a lot of meaning in that. It is so simple but yet elegant without you can look at Alaska's flag and you don't need to know much about its history to know what it means. You just kind of derive it from other history, and I think that is really nice. I do really like Antarctica's flag a lot. That one is really man, that really speaks to my soul. But I think if I had to choose one, it's the Alaskan flag.
Thank you.
Of course.
One more time for Richardson! All green flags, sir. Excellent talk.